Welcome back to Wonders of Our Planet. Today, we're talking about the mammoth. What do we know about him? A big shaggy elephant with curved tusks, the picture from every prehistoric storybook, the so-called king of the Ice Age. Extinct 10,000 years ago, somewhere next to the dinosaurs at least, that's the picture most of us carry out of grade school. Except the dinosaurs have nothing to do with it. They were gone 65 million years before the first mammoth ever walked the earth. Some of you have heard that hunters in Siberia still dig up whole mammoths out of the ice, with hair, meat, and dark blood still inside them. And almost nobody knows the wildest part. A biotech company in Texas right now is working to bring the mammoth back. Through CRISPR, through surrogate elephants, through DNA that frozen ground preserved for tens of thousands of years. So who was the mammoth, really? And is he truly dead? Right here, right now, let's get into it. The mammoth belongs to the genus Mammuthus, and he is not the ancestor of the modern elephant. He is the cousin. Both share a common African ancestor that lived about 5 million years ago. The elephant stayed home. The mammoth walked north, out of Africa, across Eurasia, then over the Bering Land Bridge into North America. The most famous of them is the woolly mammoth, Mammuthus primigenius, the one we picture by default. But there was also the steppe mammoth, almost 15 feet tall at the shoulder, the largest land mammal with a trunk that ever lived. There was the Colombian mammoth, Mammuthus columbi, which lived right here in North America from the Great Plains down into Mexico. And there were dwarf mammoths on the Channel Islands off the California coast, no bigger than a Shetland pony. One animal somehow at home from Southern California to the high Arctic. People often confuse the mammoth with the mastodon. They are not the same animal. The mastodon is an older, separate branch with cone-shaped teeth for chewing twigs and branches. The mammoth had flat, ridged grinding teeth like a giant cheese grater, perfectly designed to crush dry steppe grass. The woolly mammoth lived from about 600,000 years ago down to 4,000 years ago. That last number matters. The very last mammoths were still walking on Wrangel Island in the Russian Arctic, when Egyptian engineers were already building the pyramids. Between the pharaoh Cheops and a living mammoth on the same planet, only about 500 years. The woolly mammoth weighed between 3 and 4 tons, a little lighter than a modern African elephant, but stockier. He wore 2 layers of fur, a soft inner coat like sheep's wool, and a long outer coat up to 3 feet long in shades of brown, black, and copper. Under his skin was a 4-inch layer of fat, like a walrus. Small ears and a short tail kept him from losing precious heat. His tusks could reach 13 feet in length and weigh up to 200 pounds, curving toward each other in front of his face. He used them to scrape snow off the grass and to fight other males. He carried only 4 grinding teeth at a time, replaced in sequence 6 times over his life. That gave him about 60 years. When the last set wore down, he could no longer chew, and he starved to death. That was his natural ending. Now here is where it gets interesting. The woolly mammoth did not die out from the cold. He died out because the climate started getting warmer. The dry mammoth steppe, a grassland that once stretched from Spain to Alaska, turned into wet tundra and forest. His food was gone. And then humans finished the job. By the time the climate had weakened him, hunters with stone-tipped spears were spreading across both Eurasia and the Americas. The Clovis culture in North America, around 13,000 years ago, left behind dozens of kill sites, including the famous one near Naco, Arizona, where a mammoth skeleton was found with 8 stone spear points still buried in its bones. By 10,000 years ago, mainland mammoths were essentially gone. The dwarf mammoths of Wrangel Island held on the longest until about 1700 BC. And here the story stops behaving like a story. Siberian permafrost is the best freezer on Earth, minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit, year-round for the last 40,000 years. Inside that frozen ground are thousands of mammoth carcasses. The Yukagir mammoth, pulled out in 2002, came up with hair, stomach, and the remains of his last meal still inside him. Yuka, a female found in 2010, still had elastic muscle tissue and dark, thick blood in her veins. From these carcasses, scientists are extracting DNA. In 2021, a Texas-based startup called Colossal Biosciences, co-founded by Harvard geneticist George Church, announced a plan to bring the mammoth back. Take the mammoth genome, find the differences from modern Asian elephant DNA, edit the elephant DNA with CRISPR, implant the embryo in a surrogate, and 22 months later, get an animal almost genetically identical to the extinct one. Colossal has already raised more than $400 million. The first calves are expected by 2028. Why do this at all? Supporters argue that mammoths were ecosystem engineers. By trampling moss, breaking snow, and knocking down trees, they kept the tundra cold and dry. Without them, the modern Arctic is thawing faster and frozen methane is leaking out of the ground. Bring the mammoth back, the theory says, and you slow global warming. Critics say it is not a real resurrection. It is a genetic copy with no mammoth mother, no herd, no inherited behavior to learn from, a lonely animal in a world that no longer fits him. And there is already a mammoth economy touching living elephants today. Every summer, villages in northern Siberia pull tens of tons of ice ivory out of the thawing ground. It is now the only legal substitute for African elephant ivory, and a single intact tusk can sell for tens of thousands of dollars. The mammoth, in other words, is still feeding manatee, even from underground. The mammoth reminds us that in nature, extinction may not always be the final word. For 10,000 years, this animal was assumed to be gone forever. And it turned out the Arctic was carrying him through time the whole while, like a message in a bottle. Today we stand at a strange threshold. Bring him back, to fix a mistake we made, or let him rest where he fell. Maybe the real lesson of this giant is that extinction is not always final, if someone, somewhere, still remembers. If you enjoyed this story, hit the like button and subscribe. That's what keeps these videos coming. Thanks for watching Wonders of Our Planet.